Good afternoon, my friends. This is the Grim Flayer, and I hope you are all doing very well today. You must have seen this title and started thinking, what's going on? Has the Grim Flayer gone absolutely crazy? This isn't a full league. This looks like just a one-off match. And I have not gone crazy, or at least I hope not. And you are correct, this is just a one-off match. So allow me to explain. I posted a channel update video a couple days ago, and thank you, by the way, to everybody who gave me feedback there. It is heard, and it is taken into consideration and appreciated. One comment that I got from FalconLord78 is to have shorter one-off matches, which not only allow us to watch and learn how to win these matches, but also make it quicker for those days where we cannot watch a full league. And I explained back that, I think the leagues are the most popular thing, and that I have done timestamps for the league videos, so you can skip around the league videos if you're so inclined more easily, or watch them piecemeal more easily. However, this is still a good idea, and we're going to do it today. And the other thing that I'll note quickly before we get into it more closely is that my naming convention for these going forward has changed. You can see back here, 3 months ago, before I started really getting the leagues going, full leagues, I was doing, this is the fourth time I've played as at Phoenix, this is the third time I've played Dredge, this is the only time I've played Dimir, Merge, Eldrazi, and so on and so forth, but that's from a different era of this channel, There's kind of no continuity between then and now, so going forward, because I'm also not going to do as many of these one-off matches as I used to, it is still going to be mostly the full leagues, I am just going to label them like I did this one. Golgari versus Tron, May 2019. Also might help me, get more hits as people are searching for gameplay on YouTube. In any case, why am I doing this right now? Well, I played a league yesterday, and the league was fine. The result was fine anyway, but even though I was live commentating it throughout with the intent to upload it, it was not a good league. There were so many non-games, there was so much dead air. It was just not good content. It was just not worthy of you, the viewer. Now, there was one match, however, that I think was well worth showing, and I thought, well, this is the great opportunity to do so. We'll show the Tron match, and I'm going to do it in replay form because it just makes more sense. I did have my live commentary spliced and ready to upload, but again, too much dead air, too many references to things that had already happened in the league previously that don't make sense if you're not watching the full league. So I'm doing double the work. I'm commentating the same match twice, but I'm doing it because I love you. So you're looking at the list we used for this league, and by the way, at the end of the video, after we watch the replay for Tron, I will do a brief battle report just so you know how the whole league went. So we'll talk briefly about that. But yeah, this is the same list we 5-0'd with. It's the same list you can find in the description, the May deck tech. Only exception is we brought back our Grafdigger's Cage because I believe the current meta warrants it. And right now we have had, unfortunately, to cut our second Liliana the Last Hope to make way for the Cage. So we're going to get right into the replay. Before we do, we have a laundry list of Patreon supporters to thank. This week has been amazing for Patreon, so thank you all so much. We'll begin by thanking, again, the three gentlemen who I thanked in the channel update video, because not everybody watches that, so everybody gets a gameplay vid shout-out. That would be two Inquisitors, Marc-Andre Kurasinski and Charles Vincent, thank you so much. And Domenico Toscani, who is of the Veil, which is the highest tier of support. Thank you so much for your generous support, my friend. And actually, since we did that, Marc-Andre has also upgraded to Of the Veil, so that is absolutely spectacular. Really means so much to me, guys. I could not possibly express how much it means to me, and I thank you again. But it doesn't end there. We have more Patreon supporters to thank. We have Sal Malacola, who was an Inquisitor and has also upgraded. Sal is now a Confidant. Welcome to the fold, my friend. We have David Hughes, who is a brand new supporter, also a Confidant. Thank you so much. Welcome to the fold. And we have three new Inquisitors to thank. Those three Inquisitors are Sepia Flux, Romain Parasoni, and Burrito Champion being a High Inquisitor, pledging a bit above the minimum threshold to be named as such. So those are the new Patreons, and to all Patreons, new and old, I thank you so very much. Now let's look back at this matchup against Tron. Alright, my friends, so we begin game one on the draw. Now remember, we don't know we're against Tron yet, obviously, but so really fine keeping a blind game one. Double Inquisition is just where we want to be in a blind matchup. Of note is that the land is a bit awkward, because not only are we a bit flooded already, but we don't have double black. However, the Skoos has plenty of fuel, so that's good. Problem is we see turn 1 power plant into Expedition map. Not exactly the dream matchup for our Scavenging Ooze, but we begin with an Inquisition, and we see the opponent's got Sylvan Scrying and Oblivion Stone as valid takes. Oblivion Stone is definitely really good against us in general. We play a lot of permanents. We don't have that fast a clock. We struggle to effectively pressure or disrupt them with permanents without overextending into an O-Stone. Even if we're disrupting Tron, they only need 5 mana to activate it as well. It's very feasible for them to do so. So Oblivion Stone's a really great card against us. However, I think we just take the Sylvan Scrying because we can take the Oblivion Stone next turn, and I believe that to be correct. The other reason that's correct is because as things stand, the opponent doesn't have a second Tron land to play out, so it's not like they would be choosing between going Forest into Scrying or playing an Urza's land. They just only have the Forest to play, right? So the opponent plays out that Forest, and they'll pass back to us. We draw Tarmogoyf, so that's pretty good. Our hand was certainly lacking in the clock department up until now. So, partially because the replay is sometimes a little bit slow, I encourage you to think about what you would do in these situations before I reveal what I did here. So right now our options are to Inquisition or to play the Tarmogoyf, and here I think Inquisition is the play, simply because what I said before, the Oblivion Stone being such an issue, so unbeatable for us a lot of the time. We see that they drew a Walking Ballista as well, and they actually chose not to crack the Expedition map on the end step. That would be because they're just, even though it's mana efficient to crack the map, they're hoping, of course, to top deck another Urza's land, or maybe an Ancient Stirrings or something, or a Sylvan Scrying to find the other Urza's land. They don't want to use their tutor to go get like Urza's Tower and then top deck another tower. So for them, it's better to be patient with the map than it is to just crack it for mana efficiency. At least that seems to be the case there. So opponent has played out that Ghost Quarter. They're going to pass to us. We draw Assassin's Trophy, which is indeed good in the matchup, but we are not priced into using it just yet because they cannot Tron us next turn with only one Tron land on the field. So we go Goyf, we go Marsh Flats, we pass, and on the end step, the opponent will indeed tutor up that tower. So back to the opponent, they run out the tower, they play a relic. They found a relic that's pretty awful for us. They appear to have just found it, so really nice piece of disruption. We're going to thin out the deck here. There is a world in which it makes sense to keep that fetch uncracked, partially to start rebuilding the graveyard after the inevitable relic crack. But here's the thing, a 2-3 Tarmogoyf doesn't really pressure them into doing the relic on anything but their own terms, whereas hitting for 3, that might, right? So for the reasons of thinning and the reasons of additional pressure, I'm pretty happy to crack. We're continuing to flood out, but at least it's a Field of Ruin. At least that's a good disruptive land. So I think we do have to plan to use field this turn. That's why we didn't attack with the village. And we could also have... here's the other thing we could have done. We could have main phased the field, and then we could have played the Skoos. That's an option. That's an option for sure, but I chose to wait for the draw step here. We're going to draw step, hit the tower, and that way we get to hold up Assassin's Trophy as well. We might just be really aggressively hitting the Tron lands from here on out. The opponent used the floated mana to crack the relic, sure. That's another reason I did it this way is, again, aggressively trophying this turn allows us to rebuild the graveyards quicker. Opponent found a Sylvan Scrying, so they're continuing to really get all the land tutors. It's scrying into map, so it's a bit rough for us. And now we are definitely looking to trophy here on the end step. And that's exactly what we do. So We hit the tower, and unfortunately we draw yet another land. Now, the most mana-efficient use of our turn here is to go Field of Ruin, activate it main phase, hit the power plant, and then attack with Treetop Village. However, right now, the opponent is going to, just as things stand, even if they can't assemble Tron, even if they don't top deck a land, they can crack the map to tutor any land, and then they are at Wormcoil mana. We know there's a Wormcoil in hand. It's very bad. So here's what we do instead. We attack for 3, and then second main phase, we deploy the field, we deploy the Scoos, and we're going to try to Field of Ruin them on the draw step. The reason for this is that they already have 3 forests on field. Now, those who read my Patreon scouting report on Tron decks know that 4 forests is the norm. Some decks play all the way up to 5, but some decks play as few as 3. So if we wait to the draw step here, we get the chance of just, stone raining them here with our Field of Ruin, basically. Number 1, because they might only have 3 forests. Number 2, because they could have, if they do have a 4th forest in the deck, it could be in the hand right now, we don't know. So that's why we take the line that we did. Unfortunately, they have another forest in the deck to get. So, bad news for us, there's that threshold of 6 mana, despite all of our disruption, and we've kept them off of Tron really well, but they are still just hard-casting a Wormcoil engine, so big problems for us. We'll untap, we draw yet another land. I mean, what are you going to do? We're just kind of too flooded to handle Tron here, even though we, again, disrupted their land base really well. We didn't have the greatest clock. We didn't get the Goyf down until turn 3, and then they had an immediate relic to slow it down. And beyond that, we haven't really cast many spells at all this game. So, the opponent's cracking eggs, hitting a Sylvan Scrying, getting yet another Tron land. They're really persistently rebuilding the Tron stuff after we disrupt it. And here comes the Wormcoil. We obviously can't let this thing just rampage unchecked. So even though this is horrifyingly bad value for us, I believe that it's correct to double block here. And I'd rather throw a Treetop than Scoos against a Ghost Quarter on the other side of the field especially. So what is this, a 5-for-1? Because they 2-for-1 us with the blocks. They get 2 tokens on top of that, and they gain 6 life. Yeah, that's pretty good. But anyway, we gobble up some things with the Ooze. We draw Thoughtseize, which is not a dead card at all, but also not really what we need. And we already knew about that Walking Ballista. We see Karn, we see Worldbreaker. Well, Karn is just the card that we really can't beat, but honestly, both of those other things are a bit of a problem too, right? So here come the Worms, and I didn't feel able to take the block on the Lifelinker because that just allows them to play either a 3-3 or a 4-4 Ballista if they top-decked a land for turn, and then ping the Ooze. I'd rather make them trade their Ballista for our Ooze if they're going to do that at all, right? So their alternative here is just to cast Worldbreaker, which, it's just a 5-7. Its ETB doesn't really matter. So I guess that's better for us. We draw Lily of the Veil. Amazing in the matchup. Little bit late for her. And I think we just have to Edict. We can, in theory, 1-for-1 our way out of this. We can, draw a push for the token and then draw Trophy or Pulse for the Worldbreaker and eat it with the Scoos. It's not good or anything, but however, the life totals are getting so low that I do have to trade off my Scoos there, giving the opponent free reign to just play a Ballista if they want, but instead they've got a Relic and then the Ballista, so they've got a little bit of everything. They will ping the Lily, and we're just dead. We're dead on board. They pump up the Ballista, they attack for lethal, to say nothing of the pings, so we got absolutely wrecked game 1, even though we disrupted so heavily. We had an unreal level, if you really think about it, of game 1 disruption for the Tron mana base. We successfully activated 2 Fields of Ruin. We did all this stuff, ahead of them assembling Tron. We were able to trophy a land as well. We cast a little bit. We cast, 3 total discard spells, so we're ripping up the hand too. And we had our best beater. Still just goes to show you how difficult the Tron matchup could be, because at the end of the day, we were not even close to winning that game. despite all of that. Now, of course, to be fair, we did flood. Like, that was the big issue. We just didn't have enough density of action. So, nevertheless, I wish to reinforce the need for an aggressive clock and just the ability to stay ahead when you disrupt them. Like, you gotta get ahead early and you gotta stay ahead. That's why Dark Confidant's so good in this matchup. We didn't have the Bob to help us hit action. We didn't have action naturally, and we just lost pretty hard to Tron Game 1. So let's take a look at how we side against the deck. Most of you already probably know this, but we'll take a quick look. Alright, so against Tron, against the absolute scourge of mid-range decks everywhere, we want Fulminator Mage to blow up their lands, and Surgical Extraction. Let's try again there. Surgical Extraction. Gotta love the visual bugs on this client. To usually take them off of Tron, but also sometimes if the game has gone long and they're already at a high number of land drops, to take them off of a very impactful 4 of threat like Karn or Wormcoil Engine. We have Maelstrom Pulse as a catch-all to hit all of their very powerful permanents, and we have the new technology of Ashiok Dream Render, which shuts off the search of Expedition Map, Sylvan Scrying, and Sanctum of Ugin. So, 7 great cards to come in, many of which do get better on the play, specifically Fulminator and Ashiok. I'm thinking of there, and in terms of what comes out, it's also pretty straightforward. We cut all 4 Fatal Pushes. We cut Liliana the Last Hope. These are kind of our least impactful cards, and you've seen me do this before. When I only had 6 cards to bring in, I would leave in a Collective Brutality on the play and cut a Skooz. That's because you can take away a Sylvan Scrying on the play with Collective Brutality, and sometimes that's your best option. You can't. Collective Brutality is very bad otherwise, and you can't even do that on the draw. So on the draw, we'd cut it and just leave in all 3 Skoozes, even though they're mediocre. But because we have 7 cards to bring in, we can happily cut 1 Skooz and our Brutality, and we will be configured just like this to fight against Mono Green Tron. Alright, my friends, game 2 on the play, and we've got to keep here the prospect of 3 3-drops, 2 of which are tracker, and therefore number 1 mediocre and number 2 mana hungry, land drop hungry, is not great, but the curve of Thoughtseize into Dark Confidant on the play is amazing, and we really just hope we're going to hit that 3rd land, especially with Bob's help, to play Fulminator Mage. This is a potential for an absolute backbreaking start on our end, and the opponent also mulligans to 6, so right off the bat, feeling pretty strong. Normally you can fetch and shock to your heart's content, but with 2 fetches and a Thoughtseize and a Bob, I chose to be a little more conservative with the life total and simply get a swamp. We see the opponent's got a really nice 6. They have Mine Tower. They have Expedition Map, Sylvan Scrying, O-Stone. This is the 1, 2, 3 punch of like stuff that's good early against us. So clearly got to take the map away there. And the one nice thing is, unless they draw a sphere or a star, they don't have green mana for Sylvan Scrying. So we don't need to worry about the turn 2 scrying, it appears, and we can just go ahead and play the Bob. We've drawn Tarmogoyf for turn, which is really good in the matchup, but would make me a little bit happier to just see the 3rd land there. Also would have potentially made me not have to fetch and shock, but what are you going to do? Again, probably doesn't matter. Opponent goes Mine and Pass, so all we need is the 3rd land, untapped please, from the Bob, and wouldn't you know it, we just whiff. So, like I said, the potential for a backbreaking curve out was there, but we don't have it. So what do? Well, let's attack with the Bob. And then we can either Inquisition to take away the Oblivion Stone, which we know is going to be an issue for us, so that's really tempting, or we can play the Tarmogoyf. So it's a bit of an interesting call, but I chose to run out the Tarmogoyf. Like, we just have to be mana efficient here, and we have to really assume we're going to hit the 3rd land. If we never hit the 3rd land, we're just never going to win. And if we do hit the 3rd land, well, maybe they go land Oblivion Stone this turn, and then we just Stone Rain them, and then we're setting them even further back from the Oblivion Stone, and we're just racing. Now, if they have naturally drawn the Power Plant, that's very bad, but even that means they cannot Oblivion Stone us this turn. It's 3 to cast, it's 5 to activate, they'll only have 7. Therefore, even though it feels bad to leave it in there. I think it's correct to just play the Goyf, and wouldn't you know it, they just naturally hit Tron. So, the opponent's tapping 7, very, very frightening. I'm worried about Karn, I'm worried about, maybe All Is Dust or something. It is only Walking Ballista. Now I say only, that's very bad. They ping Bob, making us less likely to hit that third land, and we still got the Walking Ballista to deal with. And of course we don't hit the third land, so it's all bad, but at least we drew a playable card. So this turn we are going to obviously just discard twice. That's the only play that is available to us with our mana, and replay is slowing up a bit. I don't want to just skip through the turn here because we have discard decisions to make. Okay, so we led on the Inquisition, and we saw a hand with only 2 spells in it, so not many decisions to make here. We take Oblivion Stone, we take Sylvan Scrying, and we leave them with Mine and Tower, so they've got a lot of redundancy with Tron, but they are still vulnerable to us finally hitting a third land at some point and hitting them with Fulminator Mage. So it's been a lot worse than it could have been for us, just simply because we haven't hit a third land. On the other hand, we were fortunate to fade like a real game-ending payoff. It's only the Walking Ballista, like I said. And the opponent's got a lot of mana here, 9 to be exact, but looks like they've got nothing better to do but to pump the Walking Ballista and to play a Sphere. Now, granted, that's pretty good because, number 1, Sphere is going to redraw and filter them into green in case they top deck like Thragtusk or Sylvan Scrying or whatever. And number 2, look how low our life total already is. Like I said, our life total is surprisingly relevant here. The Tron player actually has turn 5 lethal on field, which is really unusual. Now, often Tron will effectively, or for all intents and purposes, win the game as early as turn 3, but actually getting lethal on turn 5 is exceedingly rare. They have it lined up here. However, we finally, at long last, have drawn our long-awaited third land, but we can't just Fulminator them because we're just going to die to a Walking Ballista. So what we've got to do here is pulse away the Ballista. It's going to ping us down to 1, and then we've just got to, hope that's good enough. We hit them for 4, we pass. The opponent's still Tron line. They've got 2 draws this turn, basically, with the Sphere, plus the top deck. So they've hit a Sylvan Scrying, they go get Sanctum of Ugin, which is a really nice 2-for-1 down the road, and then they just pass to us. So, we're dead to Walking Ballista basically for the rest of the game, but now we're able to cast Fulminator Mages, and I think that's the clear play. The other option is actually to just play Tireless Tracker, or even maybe just Fulminator itself and just not use it, present lethal next turn. But they've got Tron and they've got Sanctum of Ugin. I think we just have to Fulminator them. Wouldn't you know it, the opponent's got Urza's Power Plant right away to take us right back into the danger zone with Tron, but thankfully we have the second Fulminator, and even more thankfully, they still don't have a payoff, so we're just crashing in with the Goyf. Opponent plays a Forest, and right now I'm thinking, okay, they're probably either just have a massive payoff. They haven't had a massive payoff, so they're probably just dead. But here they top deck the Thragtusk. So, that's actually one of the best ways they could try to make the stand here. It's been a really unusual game. Now, what do? We have Abrupt Decay, Tireless Tracker, and Dark Confidant's a terrible draw. So, Decay obviously doesn't hit the Thragtusk. So, do we attack? No, we don't, and here is why. The opponent is not going to take that block, even though it's kind of a free block usually with Thragtusk. We're not threatening lethal, we're not even threatening to put them down to 2 and kill them with Collective Brutality. If we were Jund and we had Lightning Bolt, maybe that's a better bluff attack, but here we don't. So we just have to play a Tireless Tracker, and in my opinion we just have to pass, because they could have Spatial Contortion, Dismember. We can't just be dead to a removal spell here. I don't think it's correct to be anyway. The opponent's getting in with a Thrag. We're going to take the block here, and it's going to be the Tracker that we throw away. We don't want to trade away our Goyf. And the opponent's got the Beast and the Urza's Mine we knew about. They have 1 unknown in hand. So once again, we're at an interesting decision point. What do we do here? Well, Number one, we could go Tracker into Fetchland. Or, sorry, Tracker into Hissing Quagmire. That is the most efficient turn in terms of making the clue and all that. I don't think that really matters. Don't think the clue really matters. We just have to give ourselves the best out to survive. So, if we attack with the Goyf, this turn, we are pretty interested in casting Abrupt Decay, potentially. Decay is just going to kill the beast, make sure we get in. Then, we are pretty dead to a Karn. If we get in with the Goyf and play Tireless Tracker into land, the Tracker can trade off with the beast, whatever. We are pretty dead to a piece of spot removal. Like I just said last turn, not necessarily the Dismember anymore, because if they take the hit, they can't cast Dismember, but just the Spatial Contortion. So again, it's a really interesting call. So think about what you would do here. I chose to attack, and then I chose to play around Karn rather than playing around the potential removal spell. So therefore, we go Goyf into Tracker into land, and the opponent has a redraw off of their Chromatic Star, and they just scoop it up. So again, we were dead to specifically Spatial Contortion there, or maybe to like a Walking Ballista for 2 that can ping the Tracker and clear the way for the beast. However, at that point in the game, you have to pick your poison. You can't play around everything. You've got to play around something. That's, you know, what you gotta play around some things and leave yourself vulnerable to others. I chose to play around Karn. Karn minusing on a Tarmogoyf if we just lean on Abrupt Decay is terrible. So that's what I did. Obviously, you could go either way, but I think we had the slightly higher percentage lines with what I chose to do here. But either way, it was a super close game. Really, really intense. We had an absolutely glorious opening hand, with a small caveat of just needing to hit the third land sometime in the first 3 draws. Our 2 natural draw steps plus the first hit off of Bob. We failed to do so, and suddenly it went from a dream to a nightmare with the opponent, you know, getting in under our stuff, answering our Bob. We're failing to hit the third land over and over again. Nevertheless, the turn 2 Tarmogoyf is what allowed us to really claw our way back into it. We hit the third land just in time to take care of the Ballista, and then we went on the Fulminator Mage train. The opponent failed to find a big payoff when they had Tron online, and just barely got there. So, really interesting game in my opinion, but now we've got to win the game 3, and we're going to be on the draw, so it's going to be a lot harder. Let's see what happens. Alright, my friends, final game against Mono Green Tron, and note that our opponent has kept 7, then 6, then 7. That's very bad for us. We really need the Tron deck to mulligan, or we really prefer them to mulligan more than almost any other deck. So what do we think about this on the draw? Well, we think this is actually a fantastic keep. Thoughtseize is one of our best turn 1 plays. We have the Trophy on 2, which is not always ideal, but if they're threatening the turn 3 Tron, it's actually the only thing that can really stop it in our deck. And then, of course, we have Liliana of the Veil on curve, which is completely amazing in this deck. We just really would prefer to either A, be on the play, or B, that they took a mulligan. But neither of those is true, so we'll see what happens. And I am shocked beyond belief to see turn 1 Forest into Expedition map. That is highly unusual. Turn 1 Forest is kind of a disaster for a Tron player, in all honesty, with arguably an exception for a really value-based matchup like us. Even so, that's really good news. So we draw Pulse, which is fine, and let's Thoughtseize and see why they played Forest turn 1, and there's your answer. They kept a 1-lander. So keeping a 1-lander on Tron is absolutely shocking, absolutely unheard of. You will almost never see it happen under any circumstances. Keeping a 1-land 7, that is. However, I think the opponent's got a justifiable keep here, at least to some degree, because they have 5 1-drops in hand, all of which can help ramp them. Some of which really help ramp them, but they've got double stirrings, you know, they've got it all in terms of the early interaction, and their payoff is one of the best payoffs against us. Oblivion Stone, again, as I've explained, is really tough for us to handle. So maybe better to keep this than to mulligan against a discard deck. I don't know, but again, it's really unconventional. One of the reasons I wanted to show you this match. So what do we do here? Well, I think the very best card in their hand is Ancient Stirrings. Now, I think generally the best one-drop in the Tron deck is Expedition Map, but right now they already have a map, they don't have the second land naturally to activate it, and as good as Stirrings is, they're often dependent on filtering into the green mana early with a card like Star. They naturally have the green mana anyway. I think we have to take a Stirrings pretty obviously. My only regret is that they have two. Unfortunately for us, the opponent immediately rips an Urza's Land off the top, so that's kind of the main thing they needed, and therefore they don't have to cast the Stirrings, they can just hold up the map, which is way better. So, good for us, we draw Tarmogoyf, so they got in a really nice top deck, and so did we, and I think it's going to be better to slam the Tarmogoyf here than it will be to, just hold up Trophy, which is what we would be doing otherwise. Opponent will crack the map, they will go get a power plant, they will deploy the power plant, and they're just going to get their Oblivion Stone in under discard. So the opponent chose to play the O-Stone rather than, play map and hold it up, or, start with a Stirring, see what happens, maybe follow up with Star and map. That just, again, goes to show you how good Oblivion Stone is in this matchup. Now, what do we do here? I know I've lingered on some decisions. I'm telling you, there were a lot of really interesting decisions this match, more so than usual against Tron, that is for sure. So, obviously, there are three really appealing options here. Number one is to just pulse away the O-Stone. It's a really clean answer to a really problematic card. Big problem with that is then we're not disrupting Tron. Another option is to play Liliana. Liliana is better now than she will probably ever get. The earlier the better with Liliana. She disrupts really heavily. And we do have some pretty free pitches. We could pitch Swamp, we could pitch an extra Liliana. It's not like we're losing something irreplaceable if we play Lily Ticker up. Again, the big problem with that, even bigger problem than pulsing the O-Stone, is they get to untap and maybe find Tron and have O-Stone to activate. Or we can have a really mana-inefficient turn, but have the guaranteed disruption of O-Stone by using Assassin's Trophy. So let me know, my friends, or, think about, I guess, what you would do. And here, I decided to go on the Trophy plan, and because we're going on the Trophy plan, we might as well do it now and grow the Goyf during the attack step, because a 4-5 is a quicker clock. It's a 5-turn clock relative to the 3-4, which takes a lot longer to get there. Now, they could disrupt all of this with Relic and all that, but the opponent leads on Forest and then plays Chromatic Star, which is really interesting. You would expect maybe Forest crack the Star to try to dig for Urza's Land first, but they're just choosing instead to run out the map, and they know they're going to have the Urza's Land online next turn. So we're back to almost the same exact decision point we had last turn, although it's a turn deeper into the game, so the opponent is able to hard activate Oblivion Stone next turn without needing the mana, without needing Tron mana. What do we do? We're just in basically the same exact situation as we were before. So, again, my friends, think about what you would do, and once the client catches up to us, you'll see what I did. Maybe the client's sluggishness with replays is relative, actually, to how long it took the player to do something, and that makes sense, because I was thinking pretty hard here, not gonna lie. So, I chose, once again, we're not Lilying, we're not pulsing, even though there are really good windows for those things. We are going on the Trophy plan. So, we don't need the Trophy during the attack step, that doesn't grow the Goyf, and normally you would see people draw stepping, and myself included. Often you will draw step like we saw in round 1. Game 1 of this round, rather, to try to take them off of basic lands without having anything for them to fetch. However, we know that's not the case here. We know they play at least 4 basics, so instead we are going to upkeep the Trophy. Why upkeep? Well, if they want to use their mana, like float a mana, activate the map, basically get a free mana for turn, they have to do it now in the upkeep, rather than taking their information off of the draw step first. So, if that's the plan, that's what they've got to do now. And indeed, that is what they choose to do, so we're rewarded for that. Also note that this takes them off of Oblivion Stone mana this turn, so that's actually really relevant. So I'm very happy with that play. That said, the opponent's still just doing everything, their hand allowed them to as long as they naturally hit land drops, and that's exactly what they're doing. So they're rewarded for that. They cast an Ancient Stirrings, they find a Karn Liberated, and it's back to us. So we untap, we draw Surgical Extraction. Wow, what an interesting draw that is. So again, what do we do here? What do we do? Is it Liliana time? Is it Pulse time? What do we extract? When do we extract it? Well, I'll show you what I did. So we're going to hit again with a Goyf, and again, that early trophy is rewarding us. They're down to 8. Then I think we finally take our window to pulse away the O-Stone again while it's tapped out, and then we pass. Then what we're going to do is draw step, hit the Surgical Extraction, targeting, of course, the Urza's land that is not on the field, Urza's Power Plant, and the reason we, of course, draw step it is because we're likelier to get them with a power plant in hand, just like we did. We also get maximum information on what their hand is. Against some decks, it's not necessarily safe to draw step Surgical because it's just giving them more chances to, counter it or, play instants in response or whatever. Against Tron, it's almost always correct to draw step the Surgical because they're just operating almost entirely at sorcery speed. So this is a huge win. We take them off of Tron permanently. We get to know the full contents of their hand, which is double Karn plus Sphere, little scary. And we get a land out of their hand, which is arguably the very best thing we did there. Plus, we get to take a look at the deck. Nothing too off the wall here, except this one of Grove of the Burn Willows, very spicy, doesn't seem to matter at all against us, but we see 3 Relic, 3 Worm Coil, 2 Walking Ballista. It's good to just get a beat on these numbers of cards that are relevant against us. 3 Thrag Tusken from the side, and we see that they do indeed play exactly 4 copies of Forest. So opponent's going to begin their turn by cracking the star, playing out the sphere, cracking the sphere, just on the dig, and hey, there's that Grove of the Burn Willow. So they hit a land, and that's actually pretty good for them, because they were on 5 lands, pretty far away from Karn, but now they've got a land for turn, and if they top deck a land next turn, it's Karn territory. So what do we do about that? Well, our top decks have been decent. Unfortunately, Forest is not a very decent top deck, but, that's all right. We finally have a window to play the Liliana. The opponent's going to pitch a Karn. We know they have another one in hand, and that's going to grow the Goyf even more to a 5/6. So sure, there was a consideration under certain circumstances for pitching our Liliana to grow the Goyf, and also so we could play the Forest, just get maximum value out of an active Liliana, empty our hand and all that. Not the case here, because double Liliana could be relevant. We, if the ult doesn't look likely, we might go discard, play another Lily, discard again, or double Edict could be relevant. Plus, we knew about the double Karn, so we kind of knew they were going to pitch a Karn there and grow the Goyf anyway. Not that growing the Goyf changes the clock right now, but I just want to, since we have the luxury of being in replay mode, I want to outline every possible little upside I can think of, right? The luxury of a replay covering only 1 match instead of 5. So, sure enough, they hit their 7th land and they exile the Goyf. So, despite all of our good plays here, despite the fact that we are competing really well in this matchup, considering the opponent's really strong hand that needed a bunch of top-decked lands to be good, and they got it, we are in trouble. We need an answer to Karn, or we need another creature right away to force the Karn to minus. And guess what? We drew the answer to Karn, so that's just a beautiful thing. We pulse away the liberated Planeswalker. We tick up losing our other Lily, but we get a Worm Coil out of their hand, so it's very good. Now, having said that, we're still in top deck mode against a Tron opponent on 7 lands, so we are far from out of the woods yet. We don't have any creatures, and we desperately now need to find a creature to get this game ended. The opponent's top deck is Chromatic Sphere. Very interesting decision for the opponent to just play it and pass. Obviously, they can crack it, and because it adds a mana, they can cast anything 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and Sphere is mana neutral, so they can cast anything 6 mana or less here if they if they crack it and they find it. However, I guess they're worried about finding another Karn, an Ugin, maybe Ulamog, something that they crack now, it gets stuck in hand, they just lose it to the Liliana. So, tough call. I don't know what I would do in the opponent's shoes there, but the opponent does indeed choose to just run it out and not use it. Now, that's kind of good for us, because if they had had like a Thragtusk or something, that would be a disaster, because we top-decked a land. So we would have had to just edict the Thragtusk and then die to the Beast token. Would have been horrible. But as it is, we get a bit of a reprieve, and we are threatening to ultimate next turn, which is, needless to say, amazing in the matchup. Opponent cracks the Sphere, finds a Stirrings, casts the Stirrings, finds an Ugin, and plays Relic of Progenitus. Now, at first glance, especially after this many decisions, it might look to you like we're in great business. We can just take the Lily up, get the Ugin out of their hand, and then we can ult the Lily next turn and still keep her around. That's a trap, because remember that they can cantrip in response to the Lily +1, pitch whatever it is, and then play the Ugin next turn, assuming they're going to hit their 8th land, of course. So definitely got to watch out for that against Tron. End step, we're going to thin out the deck, and we draw another Liliana of the Veil. That's actually one of our very best top decks, because now we get to do everything. Now we get to ult the Liliana, which is obviously really, really, really good against Tron. Opponent will Relic in response, sure. They don't want to lose it without cantripping, so they're just looking to immediately rebuild. And then we get to play another Liliana and tick her up asymmetrically, so it's all very, very good. I chose to split the piles like this, I think, because, remember, they're permanently taken off of Tron. I think Forest is actually overall their best land. So we split the lands like this. You know, who knows, they probably just keep whatever 4 I give them, honestly, no matter what 4 it is. But I think that's the best 4 to give them. And then we get to follow up, like I said, with that other Lily. They pitch that Ugin, so they've got 1 unknown in hand, a second one for the draw step, and again, we're not out of the woods, but you know, the top decks have been decent, not gonna lie. So the opponent's got a Sphere, they cantrip into a land, and to be fair, we have had some dead top decks of fetch lands as well. So the opponent mainly just wants to hit land drops there, and that's what they did. They want to hit Thragtusk now, probably. No point in casting our Inquisition here, we just tick the Lily up and get another Worm Coil out of their hand. That's so good. We pitch our Inquisition. And back to the opponent. Opponent's got a star, sure. And once again, they're choosing to hang on to it, rather than crack it and risk losing whatever they find to Liliana. So once again, we're simply going to take our chance to ultimate. I think it's correct. We did draw a Hissing Quagmire in case I clicked too quickly past that. So we've got a 2-turn clock on the field. And once again, I'm kind of just giving them the fewest lands possible that are colored, or they can keep the 3 colorless. Worth noting that the Chromatic Star, they still get to draw off of it, even though they didn't sack it. That's just how that card works, unlike Chromatic Sphere. So the opponent's only on 3 lands, no green, so it's very good for us, and we have another marvelous top deck of Tireless Tracker, and we get to do absolutely everything we want to do this turn. We get to fetch, make a clue, make 2 clues rather, and still fire up Quagmire, and the opponent sees the writing on the wall. The opponent just scoops it up while we are searching for our lands. So that was an absolutely epic win, if you ask me, against Tron. Definitely a lot of non-obvious decisions, again, in my opinion, and definitely a lot of decisions where neither play was necessarily strictly correct or strictly incorrect. But I think there were some spots where if we had taken a less optimal decision, we could have just lost. We could have just lost either post-sideboard game, honestly, in a couple different spots. But, of course, there's a lot of moving pieces here. There's a lot of really interesting decision points, so let me know if you think I was incorrect about anything. That's very possible, or if you have an argument for an alternative position. I'd like to discuss this matchup if there's some stuff to discuss, or if you more or less agree with me. I know, I wouldn't hate to hear that either. So, either way, really, really interesting matchup here, and you know, it's not often that Tron plays a really interactive game with a lot of really impactful decisions, frankly, from both players. But that's just the power of BG. That's just the power of Golgari. We are forcing even the Tron players to think. We're forcing them to really puzzle out what their best odds are for this line versus that line, and it's a beautiful thing. So, and of course we came away with the win. So, good games, very well played by the opponent, and that was our replay. That was our replay against Tron. So, thanks for watching that, and now let's take a quick moment to talk about the league in general, how it went, and why I didn't upload the full league. Alright, my friends, so this league, like I said at the beginning of this video, the result was fine. We went 3-2, and that makes, it's been such a great month for us on this channel. That makes 10 leagues this month, all of which have been positive. 3-2 has been the worst record so far. We've played 8 competitive leagues with the May list, and 2 friendly leagues, all of which have been 3-2 or better, so you can't ask for more than that, plus we got the published 5-0. It's been wonderful. But nevertheless, not every successful league, or not every league of any kind, is good content. Like I said at the beginning of the video, there was just a lot of non-games, a lot of dead air, just not the very best content. I also had a sideboarding bug in match 5 that made me unable to sideboard for game 2, but we still got there in that matchup anyway, kind of amusing. But, you know, it was just a bit of a mess of a league, so I thought it was a good chance to revisit this one-off video format, but let me know what you think about that. Of course, again, the leagues remain the bread and butter of the channel, but let's just, to give you an idea of how the league went, we'll talk quickly. So, here in match 1, we were against Neoform Gristlebrand, and, you know, 2 non-games, basically turn 2 combo in game 1 through a discard spell. We took, it's actually kind of funny, we took, I think it was this matchup. I played Neoform a couple times lately. Anyway, I believe it was this one. We thought seized them turn 1, and we saw a hand with a lot of stuff, a lot of, like, the extraneous stuff, but the only combo piece was Allosaurus Rider. So we took the Rider, and then they needed to find a Rider and a Neoform to go off on turn 2. So they were on the play. They just played land and passed. We thought seize, we take the Rider. End step, they cycle Dissenter's Deliverance. They untap, they play land, they go Allosaurus Rider into Neoform, into Gristlebrand, and just win the game. So their cycle found them one combo piece, and their top deck found them the other. What are you going to do? Not much of a game. And then the post-sideboard games that I won, not much of a game either. You know, we just kind of went discard into Bob after they mulled heavily. They scooped to Liliana on the stack on turn 3. And then, you know, game 3, they just can't beat Grafdigger's Cage plus Disruption unless they find their Nature's Claims or whatever they play, Dissenter's Deliverance. So, you know, kind of non-games there. Here in match 2, who was that against? I'm just blanking. Oh, this was a hilarious non-game. This was against Jeskai Control. So game 1, we're on the draw. We mulligan to 6, and it's a 1-land 6, and we only have a forest. So, I'm not beating most decks game 1 on a mull to 5, especially game 1, you know, when I don't know what I need and when I'm not sideboarded. So, I decide to keep it, hoping to find a black land in the top 2 cards, and I draw no land on turn 1, and I draw my second forest on turn 2. I see my opponents on Jeskai Control. They go turn 3 Vendilion Click, and I scoop to conceal information, having shown only forest to them. So there's no way they think I'm on BG the Rock. There's just no way. And then in game 2, it was actually kind of hilarious. I ended up having no choice but to just go turn 2 Bob, turn 3 Bob, turn 4 Bob, sequencing around Remands. The rest of my hand was super clunky with only Lilianas and Tireless Trackers that I didn't feel able to just jam into Remand. So I was kind of trying to bait out Remands with Bobs, and they ended up resolving. So I ended up just erasing them with triple Bob and just losing to my own Bob triggers plus burn spells. So it was a little ridiculous. Here in game match 3, we were against what looked like Ponza, but proved to be basically Ponza without the land destruction and Blood Moon elements of things. So it was just like a Gruul ramp deck. And pretty good matchup for us, because we can disrupt the ramp with removal and with discard. And, you know, they're going to struggle to answer our Tarmogoyf. And their stuff's big and clunky. We have answers to big and clunky things. And that's how game 1 went, but games 2 and 3, I was just ridiculously unlucky. I took, game 2, I just flooded out really, really, really hard and eventually lost to top decks. Game 3, I think I took maximum damage possible from Bob Triggers while being ahead, and the opponent just rips back-to-back like Stormbreath Dragon into Glorybringer, and we just die, so very frustrating loss there. You saw match 4 against Tron, and then here in match 5, it was a BGX mirror against Jund. I had the sideboard bug, so I went into game 2 totally unsided, and game 1 was a total non-game, with the opponent winning it, they just curved out perfectly, absolutely nothing we could do differently. Game 2 was a little bit ridiculous because we mulliganed hard, the opponent left in discard, they punished us for that, and then the opponent just got stuck on 2 land, and we just went off with a pair of Tireless Trackers, just immediately ended the game. Another non-game. And then game 3 was yet another non-game in our favor, with our opponent just kind of doing nothing. So we came away with a 3-2, but it was a ridiculously low-quality league. I just wanted to just give you a little taste of what happened, just in case that edifies you or helps your perception of any matchup in any way. But the Tron matchup was the standout actual game of the league, so that's why we took a look at that, and that's why we didn't upload the full league. Alright, my friends, so that was our one-off replay. Let me know what you think about the format. Like I've said repeatedly, the leagues are still where it's at. The next gameplay content you see, I plan to have a full live recorded competitive league like always, but I thought, given the circumstances of how this one went, this was the perfect opportunity to do a trial run of returning to some degree to these one-off videos. Thank you for watching, let me know what you think, and thanks once again to our large amount of new Patreon supporters. We've got Marc-Andre Kurasinki, Charles Vincent, Domenico Toscani, Sal Malacola, who is upgraded, David Hughes, Burrito Champion, Romain Parasoni, and Sepia Flux. Thank you all, my friends. Everybody who's on Patreon, thank you so much. And if Patreon is beyond your means, remember, that is okay. You can still help this channel grow. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel, word of mouth, all that stuff. It all helps me grow. And that's what we're after, my friends. We want the growth on this channel. And yeah, life is good. Life is good when we're playing The Rock. And we've got 2 days, count them, 2, until the first Modern Horizon spoilers begin. So make sure you stay tuned to this channel, because we're going to be doing what the viewers want. We're going to break down the Horizons cards as they come out, rather than waiting till they're all done. Anything that might be BG playable that's causing some buzz, you'll get a video about it, and we'll talk about whether it's good, what its role is, how it might affect the broader meta, so on and so forth. So we've got League gameplay coming up, and we've got Horizon spoilers coming up. So I will see you on this channel for those videos, and I look forward to hearing your feedback on this one. Thank you once again, my friends. I will talk to you soon. I hope you have a great day.